So a few years ago, the Victorian Department of Health and Human Services came to BehaviourWorks and said, we've got a problem with too many people dialing the ambulance service in Victoria. And the behavioural challenge they brought to us was, how do we stop people dialing an ambulance when they don't really need one? So we did what's called an evidence review as our first step in trying to address this behaviour change challenge. An evidence review is a technique that researchers use where they bring together all of the studies of a particular topic to tell a story about what the overall body of research has found. So in this case, we were looking for studies around the world that had examined the challenge of how do you stop people dialing an ambulance when they don't really need one. The reason that we do evidence reviews is to increase our confidence in what the researchers found. Let's say that you find one study from England that has done a particular thing to stop people dialing an ambulance. That's great. But what have other studies found? By not focusing on that one study from the UK, but looking at, for example, 5 or 6 studies from around the world, we get a more well-rounded picture of what the overall research has found. Well, the problem with just looking on the internet is you're basically in a massive haystack of all the web pages in the world. There's about 6 billion of them. It's good to think about evidence in terms of a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid is basically everything that's not research. The next level up the pyramid is university research studies, a much, much smaller volume. And at the top of the pyramid are reviews that have already brought together those individual studies. Go to the needles in the middle and the top of the pyramid. You can review primary studies from the middle of the pyramid, or you can review reviews from the top of the pyramid that have already done the work of bringing primary studies together. And that's called a rapid review. What's happened is that governments and other leaders want access to research evidence, but they want it a lot more quickly than researchers had traditionally been doing reviews. So governments that wanted things in 6 weeks wanted them in 2 days. Governments that wanted things in 1 week wanted them in 2 hours. And so it's really just accelerated a trend that's been happening over the last 10 to 15 years to get us the useful knowledge from research as soon as you can in a credible way. When you've got a really complex question or a really complex challenge, it's really important to understand what's the precise question that you want to answer. So, why do people call an ambulance? There's what do people know about the role of the ambulance service? There's probably 15 or 20 questions in there. So once we understand which is the most important question for a government or a leader or an organisation, we can take that question away, go back to the university, go back to our information experts, and search those academic databases for those needles in the middle of the pyramid and bring the results back to you. That's a skill that can be learned, but it takes quite a lot of time and it involves quite a lot of technical detail, technical work. So what we find is that governments and others don't really have that time. So they ask us to go away and do it. And our responsibility is to get the question right before we start. The review was really informative. It unpacked a lot of potential solutions to the problem. Some countries, for example, have separate numbers for non-emergencies, and we have that in Victoria. It's called Nurse on Call. Other countries centralise everything through one number. So we took that information back to the ambulance and the Department of Health and others, and our partners, the Shannon Company, came up with a campaign that was very deliberately targeted to doing the right thing.
Seconds count when someone's life's on the line. Help Victorian paramedics save lives by saving 000 calls for emergencies.
We were able to reduce the amount of unnecessary calls to the 000 ambulance service, which freed up time for ambulance officers to respond to genuine emergencies. And if you want to read more about the study that we did and the review that informed that study, you can follow the links on your screen now.